have been a couple things that have been coming to my attention with the Western medical system lately. I mean, I've been in the throes of what the Western medicine industry essentially has to offer for over a decade now, really being forced to be involved in it, or choose not to be involved in it, I guess. And last night something came up, and then also recently I was having a conversation with a friend about a story that I had. I was telling her about an experience I had with Western medicine and pharmaceuticals. So last night we were hanging out with two trauma doctors, and they were kind of telling some stories about what happens in the ER and what they deal with and everything. And then we actually were talking about alcohol and the effects of alcohol. And I just mentioned that they didn't know I had any chronic illness or anything. And I just mentioned that I had Lyme disease for 14 years. And one of the ways that I was able to deal with like actually being in a social situation, which is supposed to be fun, but I was like dealing with it. I was just coping to be there, and having a drink for me, just one drink, maybe two drinks, would suppress my nervous system enough that I was able to take in a lot more sensory input because of it. And so then they were like, whoa, and they started asking me about like all the Lyme stuff, and it was really interesting just seeing kind of their reactions to it, because they don't, working in trauma, they don't see a lot of chronic cases, or if they do come across chronic cases, they see them for a very, very short amount of time, maybe minutes, hours, a day or something, and then there isn't like much of a follow-up on that. So it's really interesting seeing, we were talking about nutrition, and I have asked multiple doctors that either doctors that I have seen as a patient or just people that I know who are doctors, who I've asked that, how much nutritional training did you have? How many classes on nutrition? And so I asked both of them. Neither one of them had any classes on nutrition. I can't believe it's like we're fueling our bodies with like something every single day, and they had no classes on like the basics. And for what I'm learning in Ayurveda right now, it's such, it's I can't even like begin to talk about like how are just being put in our cells. And so if we're putting chemicals in our cells every day, then we're going to be having cells full of chemicals, and those chemicals come in many, many, many different forms, which is in all of our food systems today, whether that's pesticides or fertilizers or natural flavorings or artificial flavorings or MSG, all different kinds of stuff that is in our food that then becomes our cells and that we have to process. So I just find it really fascinating that like doctors really are not educated in nutrition, and instead are educated in how to serve out pharmaceuticals to people, how to prescribe pharmaceuticals. And this leads to my second story, is that so early on in my Lyme journey, I maybe had, I don't know, it was maybe like 3 years in, 4 years in or something. I was still really going to Western medical doctors to find out like what was going on with stuff. And I had, from the very beginning, even before I really had chronic Lyme symptoms that were affecting like my quality of life daily, I had skin rashes as a kid and everything. And so my skin rashes got really, really bad when I was starting to have my symptoms get worse and worse, and so I ended up going to see dermatologists a lot. I was seeing a new dermatologist, and he was a young guy fresh out of med school, and had a big beautiful practice in a beautiful building that was his, so he probably had come from some kind of wealth in his family, which that has nothing to do with much, except that can influence like how a doctor might run their practice, how they might have gone to school, like what they maybe had to do to get into school. There's some differences there. But he was in the hallway talking to a rep, a pharmaceutical rep, and we're sitting in this room waiting for him. The nurse had brought us in there, had checked us in, and we're just kind of sitting there, and we can hear him and this girl talking in the hallway, and we're waiting and we're waiting, and we're like, okay. Finally, it was like 20 minutes that we had been sitting there past our appointment, and he comes in, and we see the rep standing out there, and she's this cute, like, blonde girl that, you know, is around the same age as him. And so he comes in, and he's like, hi, and he's very nice, and he listened to my concerns about what was going on, and was, you know, genuinely like, oh, we're gonna try to fix this. We don't know what it is. Heard that a lot. Don't know what this is, but we're gonna try to fix this. You're kind of a puzzle. Hear that a lot. Heard that a lot from doctors. And so he's like, oh, well, you know, I just heard about this prescription, this pharmaceutical topical cream from this rep that just came in. Let me give you a sample of it, and if it works, then and it's just, I'm thinking about this now and going, wait a minute, you just heard about this 2 minutes ago. You haven't done any research on this. You don't know, maybe she gave you some quick run-ups on trials that were done about it, but you have no idea what's necessarily in this. Maybe you knew a little bit about what's in it, but I mean, like, you don't know anything about this. You just heard about this, and you're completely trusting the word of the rep and their company to give this to your patients for something that you're not even really sure what this is. So it's just like, it just kind of wrapped up a lot for me thinking back on this recently, talking to a friend about the story, that, like, really, it's a lot of what is prescribed is because people don't really know what's going on, and they're just like, we're just going to shoot it dark. We're going to try this. I mean, there are going to be symptoms that lead people to say, like, oh, this is probably going to, might work for you. This is what it's prescribed for. It might work. But think of how many prescriptions you've tried that, like, you have a really negative side effect to. And then you have to deal with the side effects, and then you might even stay on the medication because it's giving you some benefits, but the side effects are so bad that you need another medication, and it just kind of builds and builds. And so I'm thinking about it, and I'm going, so much of what I've actually treated now years down the line from the story with this dermatologist. This is like over a decade ago that I saw him, most likely, at least a decade ago. And I'm like, I have treated almost everything with food and herbs now. That is what I am treating myself with. I use colloidal silver. I use, everything is like a natural substance. It's a natural thing that I'm using to treat myself and bring my system back to like a beautiful homeostasis where it could survive. It's just, I mean, we all know pharmaceuticals are running the country. We all hear big pharma. We all hear all this stuff. And even regardless of everything else that's going on now with all that, this has been going on forever. And this is just, I can't even begin to say how much changing my nutrition and really eating foods that are whole foods has actually helped, like, what it is, and that doctors just don't know anything about this because they go to school to learn about what drugs to prescribe to people. They don't go to school to learn about how, you know, they're going to tell you to exercise, they're going to tell you diet and stuff like that, but then they're going to give you a pharmaceutical. Like, I've had doctors that have brought nothing up about diet and nutrition when I go to see them about things, like, even GI doctors. I've been to GI doctors who have not talked to me about diet and nutrition, other than maybe saying, like, well, have you tried a FODMAP diet or something like that? And not even that sometimes. I'm just kind of blown away by it all. It's just a weird fact of life that we're living in this country that is just basically run on this. Well, let me know in the comments below what your stories are about anything with this, or your thoughts on this, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Alright, bye.